politician we need in India. He's studied law and he's going to talk us about it.
Thank you. I have been told to speak on politics. Let me so let me start with the crass reality of Indian politics. That is, you should come out of this false assumption that India has two national parties. India has only one national party. One is BJP, other is 1.5 BJP. And why do I say this? Because I'm reminded of a quote given to a journalist friend of mine during the Gujarat pogrom, which was happening in 2002. Sangh Parivar leader told this senior journalist that Congress is Vajpayee Congress and BJP is Advani BJP. So please come out of this false assumption that you have two national parties. We have only one national party. And yes, the present politics, there is a grave threat to our separation of powers. Earlier also, I cannot say that the earlier regime of Congress or UPA didn't try to weaken separation of powers, but now in the present day, there's a grave threat to that separation of powers. Thirdly, if you have a grave threat to separation of powers, when executive has to be independent, judiciary has to be independent, legislature has to be independent. Unfortunately, what we are seeing now is that you have this overpowering executive which wants to control the legislature and the judiciary. You must have read, sitting in Harvard or sitting in USA, that how 4 senior Supreme Court judges had to do a press conference and basically have to plead with the people of India, please save the democracy. And then you have this great scientific development which has taken place, that whenever a government wants to get a decision in their favor, they have developed this art of maybe, I'm sure even Lord Denning would have been surprised that you give something in an envelope and give it to the honorable judge, and the judge accepts whatever is written in that envelope. So there is a grave threat. I am not demeaning the judiciary, because in the light of what happened in a recent case, whereon it was proven wrong, there is a grave threat to our separation of powers because of present day politics practiced by the ruling party. Fourth, there has been always a cartelization of power, and you have this particular groups, the dominant upper caste Hindu groups, who have always been in power, whether it is BJP or Congress, and there are numerous examples which I can give. Fifth point is, because of this cartelization of power, the present day Indian politics is not what XYZ can deliver in terms of justice, in terms of fraternity, in terms of liberty, in terms of equality, which our forefathers had enshrined this in our preamble. But now the race is who can be a bigger Hindu. So if you are a bigger Hindu, you are definitely going to get a constitutional post. That is the reality of the present day Indian politics. Why do I say that? Because recently in Madhya Pradesh, 3 Muslim youths were arrested for an alleged crime of cow slaughter. You have a requisite law for that particular offense, alleged offense, but National Security Act was imposed on those 3 youths. Now, I do not know that an alleged cow slaughter is a national security issue. But you have what I said, a 1.5 BJP in power. That is why they had used NSA over there. So then you have a 7th point. You have these dominant caste groups, whether Patels, Gujars, or Marathas, who want reservations. Now this is where the real fun begins. When the dominant caste groups are feeling vulnerable, they want a share in development. This in itself speaks volumes about these people who have a great stranglehold on the power system of our India. So the dominant caste groups are feeling uneasy. So the Supreme Leader, our Prime Minister, decided that why only dominant caste groups? I'll give 10% extra to the economic weaker section, to basically to the upper caste Hindus. Now this goes contrary to our constitution, our basic fundamentals of our constitution, and that is why I started my speech by saying there is a grave threat now to the separation of our powers. The 8th point is the issue of Muslim community. That is, I condemn what happened in Kashmir. It is a grievous crime. I say with all the truthfulness and authority I have that it is Pakistan which is to be blamed for that terrorist offense which took place in Kashmir. And there are no two things about it. But the crass reality of our present day politics, and which has also been reality, that if Asaduddin Owaisi criticizes Pakistan, I am called a true nationalist. The moment I do not criticize Pakistan, my Indianness is questioned. And that is the problem over here. I am a 4th generation Indian. My forefathers rejected the ideology of Jinnah, and we said, no, India is our country. This is the land of Khaja Gharib Nawaz. We will stay here. So I have this great honor and distinction that I am not only an Indian by birth, but also by choice, which no one can take that away from me. But in the light of what happened in Kashmir, if you go to my Twitter timeline, every second question is, have you condemned this bomb blast? Have you condemned Pakistan? Why don't you go to Pakistan? And so even after 70 years of independence, I am being asked this question, that why don't you go to Pakistan? Now, no one asked, how did that happen? How did that 100 kg plastic explosive got inside Kashmir? No one is asking that question. Because the moment, now I've mentioned it, please watch tomorrow 9 p.m. TV channels. They will have a scrolling saying, Asaduddin Owaisi questions India in Harvard. Now this is the state of our politics. That you cannot question the Supreme Leader, you cannot question one national party, whether it's 1% or 1.5, is a different thing. So what we see now is that Muslims are always questioned. Kashmiris are now being targeted. I'm sure those terrorists must be feeling really happy that how, as a nation, we are not able to stop these thugs who are targeting Kashmiris. For what they are, these are terrorist people who have done it, but they are now successful. And the last point, that is, please understand that I am not a jihadi. I have taken oath on the Constitution of India. My whole fight is for constitutional rights. My whole dream is to realize what Baba Sahib Ambedkar had given these tools to us: equality, fraternity, liberty, justice, the fundamental rights. This is what I aspire for. What I aspire for is Article 39A, that is equal distribution of wealth. Wealth cannot lie in the hands of few people. And then you cannot come and tell me, celebrate India. No, I cannot celebrate, because the wealth has to be distributed. That is what the directive principle of our Constitution, Article 39A, talks about. The Constitution is self-encompassing. That the Constitution has to be a living document. Now, please understand that you had if I'm not wrong, in Boston you had a race and a marathon, right? And you had 2 terrorists who had bombed. Now, we live in India we are more closer to those stupid fellows who have this ideology. It is very easy for an Indian Muslim to take a bus from Azamgarh and go to Kashmir. But in last 70 years, you have only 25 cases where Indian Muslims went and joined the jihad. You have people from US who have gone and joined ISIS. You have people from Great Britain, from all those so-called developed democracies. But you have only confirmed cases of 29 Indian Muslims who have gone and joined ISIS. And out of that, 20 who were not from India but who were studying abroad. So my whole issue is that the politics that is being practiced right now in India, and also before also, but it is now more into your face, is that how bigger Hindu you are, and that guarantees your electoral success. That is the crass reality of our, unfortunately, of our democracy. Come election, parliament election, you will see more of this. The citizenship bill was a great example of what I have just told you. Another example which I can say with Rahul Gandhi being called the Januyadharu Hindu. Now for me, who is not part of the Savarna system, where do I go? So I am in a limbo state, because Shri Rahul Gandhi is a Januyadharu Hindu, Shri Narendra Modi is a Hindu nationalist. Now I believe in Indian nationalism, which is inclusive, because this is what the Constitution wants each and every Indian to be an Indian nationalist, not to be a Muslim nationalist, not to be a Hindu nationalist. You know, so that is why I say that the whole present day politics is only geared up towards majoritarian form of democracy, which has to be stopped. And I hope, and I'm working and I'm earnest desire, is that the next government which comes into existence in May, June, would be a non-Congress, non-BJP government, which will reflect the diversity and the pluralism of our country, which is the ethos of our country. Thank you so much.